They told me Alaska would be peaceful, endless forests, crisp air, and nothing but solitude. That's what I wanted, a fresh start. But no one warned me about the rules. Rules carved into weathered wood, buried in whispers, and enforced by things that watch from the trees. I thought it was folklore, until I broke the first one. I arrived in Port Orlan in the dead of winter, not on some scenic assignment, but to disappear for a while. My name is Thomas Granger. I'd served as a park ranger in the lower 48 for nearly a decade. After a messy divorce and a departmental investigation I'd rather not talk about, Alaska seemed like the perfect exile. Quiet, remote, untouched. Port Orlan wasn't on most maps. You had to take a bush plane to get there, weather permitting. When I landed, the pilot said nothing, just gave me a nod before taking off again. I stood there on the snow-slick runway, my duffel slung over my shoulder, surrounded by pine trees that seemed too tall, too still, too aware. The ranger station was a 2-story wooden building nestled at the edge of ELD Hollow Forest. Rustic but sturdy. The air smelled like pine, diesel, and the faint metallic tang of cold. There was one other ranger station there, an older man named Pike. When I met him, he looked me over like someone inspecting a piece of meat that might be rotten on the inside. "You the new guy?" he asked, voice rough with gravel and tobacco. "Thomas Granger, transferred from Oregon." He nodded once. "You'll call me Pike. Everyone does." He handed me a steaming cup of black coffee and gestured for me to sit at the heavy oak table in the common room. "You got any family that'll come looking for you?" I frowned. "No." "What?" Pike sipped his coffee. "Good. Makes it easier." "Easier for what?" I didn't ask. I was too tired to care. That night, Pike showed me my quarters. Spartan. A cot, a desk, a wood stove, and a closet full of thick uniforms and gear. "You'll take North Sector tomorrow," he said. "Start at dawn. But first," he handed me a laminated sheet of paper, yellowed and frayed at the corners. There were 11 rules printed on it in faded red ink. Ranger Code, ELD Hollow Station. 1. Do not enter the woods after sundown. 2. If you hear your name whispered from the trees, don't answer. 3. Carry a compass, but never trust it fully. 4. If you see a second moon, return immediately to base. 5. Never remove the carved totems from the forest paths. 6. Avoid the lake between midnight and 3 a.m. 7. Do not interact with anyone wearing your face. 8. Close and lock all windows before dusk. 9. Burn offerings in the fire pit every Thursday. 10. Log everything, even if it seems like a dream. 11. And above all, follow the rules. All of them. I laughed. Is this some hazing ritual? Pike didn't smile. Those rules will keep you breathing. I tucked the paper into my jacket pocket, figuring it was a local tradition or inside joke. Superstitions die hard in remote towns. The next morning, I strapped on my snowshoes, shouldered my pack, and set out to patrol North Sector. The landscape was breathtaking. Endless rows of pine, their branches heavy with snow. The sky was a pale, haunting gray, like something between morning and dusk. There were no animal calls, no wind, no signs of life beyond my own breath. I followed the trail markers for 3 miles before stopping at the first totem. It was a crude wooden carving of an elk with hollow eyes, its body splashed with faded red paint. Around the base were scattered stones and scraps of bone. Pike's rule about the totems came back to me. I radioed in. "North Outpost marker found. Looks like tribal art." Static, then Pike's voice. Don't touch it. Just keep walking. I pressed on. By mid-afternoon, I reached a frozen clearing and made a note in my log. I turned to head back, but something was wrong. The trail markers were gone. I spun around. The totem I just passed vanished. I checked my compass. The needle spun in slow, lazy circles. I cursed under my breath. My radio hissed static. "Pike, come in. I think I'm turned around." Silence. Then I heard it. My name, Thomas, whispered like wind through the trees. I froze. The hairs on my neck stood up. I slowly turned, scanning the tree line. Who's there? Nothing. Just silence and snow beginning to fall. Then again, Thomas. This time, it came from my left. Closer. Too close. I turned on my heel and ran, not caring about trail markers or compass readings anymore. I didn't stop until I saw the station lights through the trees, flickering like a lifeline. I stumbled through the front door, panting, soaked in sweat and snow. Pike looked up from his book. "You answered it, didn't you?" I shook my head. I got lost." He sighed and poured me another cup of coffee. "That was the first rule. Now you've been noticed." I wanted to argue, to say he was being dramatic, but the look in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't fear. It was pity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside. But it wasn't wind. It was whispering, saying my name. The next day, I begged Pike to tell me more. "What's in those woods?" He lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "This land's old. Before settlers. Before tribes. There are things here that don't care about people, but they do care about rules. The moment you break one, you owe them attention." "Oh, he exhaled smoke. "We call them the Watchers. Not ghosts. Not animals. Just watchers. And they remember." I didn't want to believe him. But that night, while logging my shift notes, I saw something out the corner of my eye. A shape at the window. Pale. Tall. Wrong. By the time I turned, it was gone. I checked the window, latched. Just like Rule 8. The next morning, I found a fresh set of footprints circling the station. Barefoot. Human-shaped. But impossibly long. Over the next few days, the rules consumed my thoughts. I followed everyone obsessively. I double-checked the totems, avoided the lake, made offerings on Thursday like Pike told me. But it wasn't enough. I started dreaming of trees growing through my skin, of a second moon bleeding red light, of voices whispering from inside my mouth. And then, on the 7th night, I saw it. From my bedroom window, just for a moment, a man standing in the trees, 20 feet away, wearing my face. Not just similar, exactly me. Same jacket, same eyes, same tired expression. He smiled, lifted one finger to his lips, then vanished. Rule 7. Do not interact with anyone wearing your face. The next morning, Pike handed me a journal, his old one. "You're going to need this," he said, "to remember what's real." I flipped through it. Pages filled with sketches of symbols, notes about forest creatures with names I didn't recognize, and entries like, March 4th, heard Julia's voice. Julia's been dead 6 years. Didn't answer. March 9th, saw myself watching from the lake. Didn't go near. March 12th, second moon appeared. I stayed indoors. Safe. I looked up at him. "Why do you stay here?" Pike chuckled, bitter and tired. "Because if I don't, someone else takes my place. And I've already broken too many rules to leave." That night, the whispering didn't stop. It got louder, closer. The next morning, the words from Rule 10 hit me hard. Log everything, even if it seems like a dream, because they weren't dreams anymore. They were warnings. And then, on the 8th day, I made the worst mistake yet. I forgot to lock the window. The air was colder that morning, not in the usual bone-deep Alaskan way, but colder in a way that felt wrong, like something old and angry had woken up outside and was now breathing frost into the trees. When I rolled over in bed, I noticed the frost on the floor first. It laced out from the far wall, delicate and sprawling like a spiderweb of ice. My heart dropped into my gut when I looked to the window. It was open, just barely, but enough. Rule 8, close and lock all windows before dusk. I had broken it, carelessly. I had been so fixated on watching the trees last night, so transfixed by the forest's unnatural stillness, that I must have forgotten to check the lock. A simple mistake, but in ELD Hollow, a simple mistake could cost you far more than sleep. I bolted upright and slammed the window shut, my fingers numb from the cold bite of the frame. I latched it, locked it, and backed away. The silence in the room was deafening. I checked my watch. 5:04 a.m. The sun wouldn't rise for another hour. Something felt off about the room, about the station itself. The warmth from the stove hadn't kicked in yet, and there was a smell in the air, earthy, but not soil. Something like mold and rot and wet fur. My instinct screamed for me to get out. I grabbed my flashlight and slipped into the hallway. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I made my way to the main room and stopped in my tracks. All the photos on the wall, past rangers, historic moments, wildlife captures, had been turned upside down. Every single one. My throat tightened. Pike was already awake, sitting at the table with a cup of black coffee, like nothing was wrong. He didn't even glance at me. "You left the window open," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. "I locked it as soon as I saw." "Doesn't matter," he said sharply. "You left it open after dark. That's all they needed." My mouth was dry. "What does that mean?" He looked up at me for the first time, and there was fear in his eyes. Not frustration, not anger. Genuine, bone-deep fear. They'd been invited in now. I didn't understand what he meant until that night. The rest of the day was uneventful in a way that puts you on edge. Even the forest felt quiet, like it was watching and waiting. I hiked only the southern perimeter, deliberately avoiding the tree line where I'd seen my double the night before. I checked the totems, still intact. Burned the Thursday offering, charred just right. When I returned to the station, the unease lingered. Every creak in the wooden beams sounded like footsteps. Every flicker of shadow outside made me jump. I locked all the windows. Twice. Triple-checked the doors. I even barricaded my bedroom window with a shelf, just in case. But sleep didn't come. I lay in bed, fully clothed, boots still on, staring at the ceiling. Sometime after 1:30 a.m., I heard it. The front door opened. Not violently, just opened. Gently, deliberately. Then it clicked shut. I bolted upright, heart hammering. The hallway creaked. Slow, deliberate steps, but not heavy enough to be Pike. I reached for my flashlight, clicked it on, and stepped into the hall. It was empty. Then I noticed the bedroom door across from mine, Pike's, was ajar. "Pike," I whispered. No answer. I edged closer, beam of light quivering in my hand. The room was empty, the bed untouched. No signs of struggle, just gone. On the pillow was his hat, neatly placed, as if set there on purpose. And on top of the hat, carved into a sliver of wood, was a symbol, an eye, wide open, slashed through the center. I didn't touch it. I just backed out of the room and closed the door. At dawn, I combed the area around the station for footprints. Nothing. No tracks in the snow, no broken branches, no sign Pike had ever left. But something was left behind, outside, directly beneath my bedroom window. Carved into the snow in clean, perfect loops were the words, "You left it open. Now we're inside." I didn't go on patrol that day. I just sat inside the station with my shotgun and Pike's journal on the table, flipping through the pages until I found something. Anything that could help. March 20th. Saw the mirror man again. "Where's my uniform now?" Almost walked into him. Pretended not to notice. They like to be acknowledged. March 28th. Left a window cracked. Heard scratching all night. Next morning found antlers on the stairs. No deer tracks anywhere. April 3rd. Rule 12. There's more than they told me. Rules change. Or maybe they do. There was no Rule 12 on my list. But Pike knew something else. Something I didn't. That night, I heard scratching at the window. Not loud. Just enough to keep me frozen in place. It came in waves. Scratch. Pause. Scratch, scratch. Long pause. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I remembered Rule 2. If you hear your name whispered from the trees, don't answer. But what about windows? What about doors? I waited in the dark, flashlight off, shotgun across my lap. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3 soft taps on the glass behind me. I clenched my jaw, held my breath, didn't turn around. "Thomas," a voice whispered from the other side of the glass. But it wasn't my voice. It was Pike's. "Let me in," he said. "They took me. You have to let me in." My whole body trembled. I stared ahead, heart punching against my ribs. "It's cold out here," Pike whispered again. "So cold, Thomas." He sounded afraid, just like I had been. But I didn't move. Then the voice changed. Deeper, wet, like something gurgling in a throat full of water. "We're already inside." The light above my head flickered and died. I turned on a flashlight and spun around. Nothing. No face at the window. No tracks in the snow. Just frost spreading across the glass from the inside. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, the station felt different. The walls looked older. The wood darker. The pictures still hung upside down. I left a note on the table. "Gonna find Pike. If I don't come back, burn the journal." I took my pack, compass, flare gun, and headed north toward the old Ranger Lookout Tower. It stood at the edge of the forest, untouched for years, and it was the only high vantage point nearby. If Pike had run, if he tried to hide, it might be there. The forest didn't welcome me this time. The trees felt thicker, the light dimmer, even though it was midday. Birdsong, gone. No wind, no crunch of snow beneath my boots. Just silence. I walked for over an hour before the forest finally gave way to a narrow clearing. And there, silhouetted against the gray sky, was the tower. The stairs creaked as I climbed, but the structure held. I kicked open the door at the top and found nothing but dust, frost, and a single chair, facing the window. Sitting in it was me, or something that looked like me. It turned slowly as I raised my flashlight, its expression calm and glassy. Its eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then it smiled, not a smirk, not a grimace. A wide, slow, unnatural smile that spread far too wide for any human face. I backed away. It stood. I ran, back down the stairs, into the trees, my breath fogging in short, panic bursts. The watchers didn't chase. They didn't have to. They were already inside me. I could feel them, watching through my own eyes, measuring, waiting. That night, I burned the journal. It felt like betrayal, but I couldn't risk it falling into the wrong hands. I sat alone at the table, my flashlight flickering, my shotgun loaded. And then I heard it again. Footsteps from the attic. We didn't have an attic. There's no attic in the ranger station. None. The blueprints don't show one, and Pike never mentioned it. Not once. But last night, as I sat alone with the shotgun across my lap and the last page of Pike's journal smoldering in the fireplace, I heard footsteps above me. Slow, careful, deliberate steps, moving across the ceiling right above my head. So I have to ask myself, what the hell is living up there? At first, I thought maybe it was just the wind, or the buildings settling. That's what I told myself, anyway, in the moments before I decided to grab my flashlight and head up to check. Except, again, there's no attic. Or so I thought. But that's the thing about ELD Hollow. Just because you don't remember something being there, doesn't mean it hasn't always been. I moved through the cabin slowly, the flashlight beam quivering across the rafters. The noise had stopped, but the damage was already done. The silence that followed was worse. It was expectant, like the station itself was holding its breath. I stood on the old oak chair, reached up to the ceiling hatch I had sworn didn't exist, and gave the metal loop a tug. It opened without resistance. A stale, moldy gust of air hit my face as I pulled down the wooden ladder. The air smelled like dust, mildew, and something else, something feral. I climbed up, slowly. Each rung creaked under my boots as I rose into the hidden darkness above the station. The attic wasn't large, maybe 12 feet by 12, but what it lacked in space, it made up for in horror. Animal bones, dozens of them, lay scattered across the floor. Some clean and white, others dark with rot. Skulls stared up at me from the corners, and old fur pelts were nailed to the rafters like twisted trophies. But what made my skin crawl was the nest in the center, made of twigs, moss, torn ranger uniforms, and hair. Human hair, and not old. Some of it was blonde. Pike's hair was blonde. Then I saw the journal, the second one, identical to the one I burned, except this one was made of stitched together skin. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Every instinct told me not to touch it. And that's when I heard it again, breathing, not from behind me, below me. I dropped to my knees and looked through the gaps in the attic floorboards, down into the ranger station. Standing in the middle of the room, beneath the hatch I just climbed through, was Pike. Except it wasn't him. Its skin was gray and stretched too tightly over its face. Its arms were longer, joints bent wrong, but it wore his uniform, and its lips moved, mimicking silent words. "Thomas," it mouthed, "why'd you burn my journal?" It looked up, right at me. I stumbled back, heart pounding, flashlight beam skittering across the walls. Then it moved. With a terrible shriek of splintering wood, the thing in Pike's skin leapt straight up toward the hatch. I slammed it shut just in time, barely catching a glimpse of its elongated fingers reaching through the gap. The ladder shook violently before falling away. I locked the hatch with a rusted bolt and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I woke up to knocking at the door. 3 slow knocks, then silence. When I looked through the peephole, no one was there, just the fog rolling in thick through the trees. I found a box on the porch. Inside was a cassette tape, labeled July 7th, 1994, incident log. I didn't own a tape player, but Pike's office, his real one, the one locked behind the double-barred door in the basement, might. I never had access to that room before. But with him gone, I decided it was time. It took me an hour to find the keys. Another 30 minutes to work up the nerve to go down. The stairwell to the basement felt wrong. The light bulb flickered the whole way down, and I swear I heard whispers echoing in the concrete. But the door opened easily. The office was sterile, clinical, metal desk, filing cabinets, one chair, no decorations, no personality, but the tape player was there. I slid the cassette in and pressed play. Crackling audio begins. Ranger Pike, July 7th, 94. Entry number 17. We found him again this morning. Jacob, third time this month. Naked, crying at the base of the tower. Said he woke up there and didn't remember getting out of bed. I asked if he locked the window. He swore he did, but I think I know what's happening now. The Wendigos don't just live in the forest. They can wear us, like clothes. If you leave something open, they get inside. And once they're in, they can pretend. I think they're learning. I saw my mother last night. She died 10 years ago, but she stood outside the station calling for me. I almost opened the door. They're playing with us now. Tape ends. I sat there in silence. The word Wendigo echoed in my mind, but something felt off. This didn't sound like Pike. It sounded like someone else. I looked at the back of the tape. A name, faded in ink. Ranger Jacob Greaves. He was the ranger before Pike. I dug into the filing cabinet and found Greaves' personnel file. Discharged. Mentally unfit. Reported hallucinations. Disappeared a week after his final entry. But the tape? It wasn't a hallucination. I was holding it in my hand. That night, I found the door unlocked. Not a door. The door. The one behind the station. The one bolted shut since I arrived. The one that looked like it led nowhere. It was wide open. Beyond it, black trees. No stars. No wind. And a figure standing just inside the forest line. Me, or something that looked like me. It raised its hand slowly, waved, then it grinned, too wide, just like the version I'd seen in the tower. It whispered something I couldn't hear, then turned and walked backward into the trees, never breaking eye contact. I slammed the door shut, bolted it, and finally understood. The rules aren't to keep the forest out. They're to keep us from going in. I made the decision the next morning. I needed to go deeper. I needed to find the source. If the rules were failing, if the things in the woods were learning, then staying put wasn't safe. And someone had to figure out what had taken Pike, what had stolen Jacob's mind. I packed 3 days worth of supplies, matches, flare gun, compass, and my knife. I didn't take the shotgun. Somehow, I knew it wouldn't help me where I was going. Before I left, I checked Pike's old locker one last time. At the very back, taped to the inside wall, was a photo of me, but not from the station. It was taken outside the tower, before I'd ever gone up there. I was standing next to the door, smiling, and in the background, barely visible between the trees, was another me, half hidden, grinning. My blood ran cold. This had been happening longer than I thought. The forest wasn't the same once I passed the totems. The air felt heavier. Colors seemed muted. Sound warped and distant. I walked for what felt like hours, using my compass to stay on course. But the further I went, the more wrong things became. The trees grew closer together, bent in unnatural ways. Moss grew upward. Birds flew in tight circles, never leaving the canopy. And then I saw it. A cabin, half rotted, overgrown with vines and lichen, almost invisible. I approached slowly. The door was ajar. Inside was darkness and breathing. I stepped in, and the door slammed shut behind me. There are places in this world where the ground remembers every footstep and the trees whisper your name long before you've spoken it. I crossed the totems, left behind a ranger station and the last shred of safety it offered. I followed the thing that wears my face, and now I'm trapped in a cabin that shouldn't exist, surrounded by a forest that eats everything, even itself. The door slammed shut so hard that dust exploded from the frame. I spun around, slammed my shoulder against it, tried the handle. It didn't budge. Deadbolt from the outside. My flashlight flickered again. I was beginning to think the forest fed off light, too. The cabin was pitch black inside, cold and damp, like it hadn't been opened in decades. The air was thick, choking thick, with the stench of mildew and wetwood. My breath fogged out in short gasps, and somewhere inside, beneath the smell of rot, was that other scent again, the same one from the attic. Something feral. Then a voice spoke in the dark. Not loud, not shouting. It was a whisper, right behind my ear. Do you remember which one you are? I spun around, flashlight cutting through empty space. Nothing, just cobwebs and a splintering wood stove. The whisper came again, this time from across the room. Are you the real one, or are you the copy? I gritted my teeth. Show yourself. The shadows moved, almost like they were trying to form a shape. But every time I focused, they melted back into darkness. I walked deeper into the room. There was furniture here, old, broken chairs, a table covered in carvings, shelves full of ruined books and bones. Small ones, bird bones, squirrel bones, human finger bones. And in the center of the room, beneath a hanging lantern that hadn't held oil in years, was a mirror, cracked, rimmed in iron, smeared with black soot. I walked up to it. My reflection stared back. But it wasn't me. He blinked when I didn't, smiled when I frowned. Then he whispered, perfectly synchronized with the voice from before. You're wearing his face, too. The mirror shattered. From inside, the shard shot out like shrapnel, cutting my cheek, my arms. Blood ran warm and fast, and from behind the glass, something began to emerge. A hand, but not a human one. It had 6 fingers, long, pale, and jointed wrong, like spider legs coated in flesh. It gripped the edges of the broken frame and pulled, dragging itself into our world, its form melting into the air around it as it passed. I ran. I didn't wait to see what it became. I barreled into the back of the cabin, kicked down a rotted door, and stumbled into a pitch-black hallway that wasn't there from the outside. The inside of this cabin was far bigger than it looked. Impossible geometry, like the space had been folded. I moved quickly, checking corners, sweeping my flashlight over crude symbols scratched into the walls. Glyphs I recognized from Pike's burned journal pages. A warning: do not look directly at it. Do not speak to it if it uses your voice. Do not follow it into the mirror. Too late for all 3. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like hours. The hallway changed behind me. Doors I passed vanished when I turned to look again. The forest was inside the walls. I saw roots breaking through the wood, vines slithering across ceilings like veins. Then I found the basement door. I didn't open it. It opened for me, and I saw Pike. He was sitting at a desk, hands folded, clean uniform. His face looked tired, pale, but it was him. Sit down, Thomas, he said. I didn't move. You're not real, I whispered. Neither are you, he said. The silence that followed was deafening. He reached into the desk, pulled out another journal, his real one this time, I could tell, bound in cracked leather, blood-stained. He slid across the table. I broke every rule in that book once, Pike said quietly, and it took something from me. My sleep, my memories. Eventually, it tried to take my skin, but I held on until I couldn't anymore. I looked down at the journal. The first page was written in a messy scrawl. The forest eats what it grows. Sometimes it grows people. I looked back up, but Pike was gone. Only the journal remained. I opened it. Inside were dozens of entries, ranger logs, sketches of twisted creatures, copied glyphs from ancient stone markers deep in the valley. One drawing caught my eye, a creature like a man, but hunched and faceless, with bark for skin and branches for arms. The caption read, "The Hollowed. It wears you from the inside out." Another page, far more chaotic, was a checklist of names. Ranger Jacob Greaves, eaten. Ranger Emily Stokes, swallowed. Ranger Pike, unraveled. Ranger Thomas Hale. That was my name, circled in red. Below it, a single note. "They made one of you. How do you know you're the original?" I felt something shift behind me. Turned. The mirror was back, whole again. But this time, the reflection didn't mimic me at all. It was my double, grinning that impossibly wide smile. Blood dripping from its teeth. Its eyes solid black. Then it lifted a hand and traced something in the glass. A symbol, same as the ones from the journal. A door. It was inviting me in. That's when I realized what the forest really was. It wasn't alive in the way we understand. It didn't just grow trees and animals. It grew identities, faces, memories, people. The rules we followed weren't to protect us from the creatures. They were meant to protect the forest from us. Because when you break them, when you act unpredictably, it doesn't know what you are. So it tries to make sense of you, by copying you, by replacing you. I snapped the journal shut and ran up the staircase that had formed behind me. Wood cracked under my feet. The walls shifted like breathing lungs. I felt it chasing me. The double, the hollowed, whatever it was. It moved through the walls like smoke, warping reality as it hunted. But I found the cabin's front door. It was open, and beyond it was the forest again. Only this time the sky was wrong. Red, like meat. The trees were bare, charred, all pointing inward towards some center I couldn't see. But I had no choice. I ran. Branches cut my face. Thorns ripped through my jacket. Something whispered all around me. Dozens of voices, all mine, echoing at once. Where do you think you're going? You're already dead. You were never real to begin with. But I kept moving. I followed the broken totems, the ones with claw marks, until I found something I never expected. The ranger station, exactly as I left it. Smoke still rising from the chimney. But something was off. My truck was gone, and someone was inside. I approached slowly, looked through the window, and saw me, sitting at the desk, reading Pike's journal. I fell back from the window, heart hammering. Had I been replaced? Or was that me before I left? Time didn't work the same anymore. I realized that much. The forest didn't just mimic people. It twisted when they existed, where they came from. I didn't know if I was the original anymore. And that scared me more than anything. Because if I wasn't real, would have been writing this whole story. I backed away from the station, my boots crunching in the frost, and turned toward the trail. I needed answers, and there was only one place left to go. The center of the forest, the valley of the black pines, where no ranger had ever returned from, where the oldest rules were carved into living stone. If I was going to stop this, stop whatever had infected ELD Hollow, I had to go deeper, and I had to do it before the thing wearing my face finished what started. There are places so ancient, even the earth forgets them. Places where rules weren't made to protect us from nature, but to protect nature from us. I've broken the rules. I met my double. And now, I'm heading to the Black Pines, the forest's beating heart, to face the thing that's been copying us all along. I didn't sleep that night. If it was night at all, the sky no longer obeyed the sun. It stayed a bruised shade of red, casting long, unnatural shadows through the trees. The moon didn't rise. The stars didn't shine. Just an oppressive crimson glow that made my skin itch and my thoughts crawl. I left the ranger station behind, quietly, so I wouldn't alert the version of myself inside. Was it a copy? A memory? Or the real me? The doubt sat like a stone in my gut. I kept trying to remember something. Anything that would confirm I was Thomas Hale, Ranger of Yeldy Hollow, not some imitation wearing his face. But memories are strange things in the forest. They stretch, blur, unravel, and that's when I saw it. A tree, enormous, taller than the watchtower. Its trunk was black, like charred bone, and every branch ended in twisted, finger-like knots. I'd reached the beginning of the Black Pines. No birds, no wind, no sound but my own breath. And beneath the base of the tree was a hole, jagged, lined with carved stone steps spiraling downward into the dark. Someone had built this. Not humans. Older. I took a deep breath, steadied the flashlight, and stepped into the dark. The descent felt infinite. The further I went, the colder it became. Not just in temperature, but in emotion. Like the tunnel sucked the warmth out of your soul. Strange symbols lined the walls. Many I'd seen in Pike's journal. Others pulsed faintly with red light. Not drawn, grown into the stone. I passed markings that looked eerily human. Fingernail scratches. Bloodstains. A shredded ranger's patch stuck in a crack in the wall. Someone else had come this way before. They didn't come back. Then I heard the breathing. Not mine. From deeper below. Slow, labored wet. I kept moving. I reached the bottom of the stairwell and entered a wide, open cavern lit by a soft bioluminescent glow. Mosses that pulsed with life and spores that floated like embers in the air. In the center was a monolith, 50 feet tall, covered in mirrored surfaces. It reflected a room, me, but not perfectly. Each face of the monolith showed a different version of me. Some old, some young, some bleeding, some screaming, some rotting. Then I saw the original Pike. He stood on the far side of the monolith, slouched, pale, eyes hollow. "You made it," he said. I approached cautiously. "Are you real?" He gave a sad smile. "Real enough." He pointed toward the mirror structure. "This is where it begins, where it grows the replacements. We call it the root." I circled the monolith. The other side showed ranger after ranger, some I'd never seen before, some I remembered from old station photos. All of them dead, their copies stepping out of the mirrors to take their place. "This is where the forest copies us?" I asked. Pike nodded. "No, it's where the forest remembers us. The copies come later. This is memory and mimicry. It's been watching since before we built cabins and towers and roads. We started coming into its space, so it started pushing back." He gestured to the mirrors. "You broke the rules, Thomas. So now it doesn't know what you are." It panicked. "It made too many of you. How do I stop it?" I whispered. "You don't," Pike said, "but you can bargain." Behind us, a new mirror darkened. A shadow stepped forward. Not a copy. Something else. A hollowed one. It wore my face, but loosely, like skin stretched over antlers. Its mouth was far too wide, its smile carved into bone. Its eyes were mine. It tilted its head, staring. Then it spoke in my voice. "Give us the memory." I shook my head. "What memory?" It stepped forward. "The original. We cannot survive with too many. One must remain. Others must be forgotten." I turned to Pike. "What is it talking about?" Pike lowered his eyes. "Your memory is fractured. You thought this was your first time coming here. But it's not. The hollowed one moved closer. You came before. You left behind the rules. You left behind your soul. You asked to forget. You asked to be new." The room spun. I felt like I was falling backward through time. Flashes hit me. Standing at the mouth of the black pines before, but older. Wearing a different uniform. Saying goodbye to someone I didn't recognize. Holding a burned copy of the Ranger Manual. Whispering, "Let me forget. Let me start again." I dropped to my knees. I've already been replaced." Pike's voice was hollow. "Yes, but the forest didn't forget. And now it wants balance." The hollowed one extended a hand. 5 fingers on one side, 6 on the other. The original mark of the forest. "Choose," it whispered. "One remains. The rest return." The mirrors pulsed. I saw myself 1,000 times. And I realized then, none of them were fully me. Not even I was. I had given pieces of myself away. Every time I broke the rules, every time I ignored the signs, I was made of mistakes and echoes. But I had learned, and maybe that was enough. I reached into my coat and pulled out Pike's original journal, held it out to the hollowed one. "Take this. It holds a memory, the truth." It paused, then nodded, took it, and stepped back into the monolith. The mirrors shattered, not explosively, quietly, like glass turning to sand. Each reflection dissolved into smoke. The monolith began to crumble. Roots burst from beneath, dragging the stone into the earth. The ground shook. The cavern screamed. "Run!" Pike shouted. We sprinted back toward the stairwell as the floor collapsed behind us. Rocks fell. Roots lashed out, trying to hold us. I climbed with everything I had, lungs burning. Pike reached the surface first. I followed, just as the monolith's last piece was swallowed. The forest screamed again, and then fell silent. For the first time in days, the sky returned to gray. Clouds rolled in. Snow began to fall. Soft. Real. The forest had let me go. But not Pike. He stood at the tree's base, smiling faintly. "This is as far as I go. You're coming with me," I said, reaching for him. But his skin had already begun to change. Bark spreading across his arms, moss covering his shoulders. "I bargained a long time ago. This is my route, my role. But you get to be real again." The trees groaned. Pike turned to them, then looked back at me one last time. "Remember the rules, Thomas. All of them, even the ones that don't make sense." Then he stepped into the tree and was gone. I emerged from the black pines hours later. No one stopped me. No doppelgangers chased me. Just the wind, the snow, and silence. I walked back to the ranger station, unsure what I'd find. It was empty. No sign of the other me. No smoke in the chimney. Just a note on the desk, written in my handwriting. "You're the last one now. Don't forget again." It's been 3 weeks. I haven't seen my reflection move on its own. Haven't heard voices in the trees. But every morning, I wake before dawn. I brew coffee. I look out over ELD Hollow, and I whisper the rules aloud, one by one. I don't let anyone cross the totems after sundown. I don't answer the radio if it speaks in my voice twice. And I never, ever look into mirrors for too long. Because I know what happens when the forest forgets who you are. It doesn't erase you. It replaces you. And this time, I intend to stay real.